Testing 1, 2. Is that loud enough? Okay, let's get started in a couple of minutes. Please be aware that there are cameras. Please don't block the cameras. Thanks, Gene.
You got to see my back.
Well, before I begin, I'd like to welcome Assemblymember Kelles, Dr. Anna Kelles, to the microphone for a brief message. Anna?
It's so wonderful to be with you all again. This is my family. I really love you guys. You keep my heart. You keep my heart going. I was just telling everyone how much I love you guys and I miss you, and it's so good to be home with you all. So I have been asked to share a prayer for the land. I think it's really fitting for all of us. I'm here with all of my speakers, colleagues, the Senator Kristen Gonzalez. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much, Sachem Sam, my dearest friend from the Cayuga Nation. And Professor Bob Howarth, my scientist at arms with me. So I wanted to start open today with the Haudenosaunee land acknowledgement. We gather on the ancestral homelands of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, whose people have lived in relationship with and cared for these lands, waters, forests, and skies since time immemorial. We honor the enduring presence of the Haudenosaunee Nation and offer our gratitude for their stewardship of this place. It is a privilege to gather here today, surrounded by the beauty of this land. I wanted to share a Haudenosaunee teaching that has meant a lot to me in my work. Among the Haudenosaunee, important gatherings traditionally begin with what is known as the Thanksgiving address, sometimes called the words that come before all else. Rather than beginning with ourselves, it begins with gratitude. The Thanksgiving address is an invitation to bring our minds together as one, to begin in what the Haudenosaunee call a good mind, a spirit of gratitude, peace, respect, and harmony. It reminds us that we all share a responsibility to live in balance with one another and with all living things. As we gather here today in this beautiful place, let's begin this event with gratitude, grateful hearts, open minds, and a shared feeling of commitment to steward the world we want to live in and leave behind for the next generations. That we stand in truth and speak out for those who cannot be with us today, but who will nonetheless be deeply affected by the actions that we take to protect this land. Thank you.
Awesome. I'd like to take this time to give a shout out to Dan Rappaport of Dan Rappaport Consulting under the pop-up tent. He's our tech guy that allows us to live stream and do things like that, and he does an excellent job. Thank you, Dan. My name is Joseph Campbell. I'm president of the Seneca Guardian and a proud co-founder of the National Coalition Against Crypto Mining. Thank you all for being here today at the beautiful Finger Lakes Welcome Center, a place that represents so much of what we're here to protect. Clean air, clean water, a thriving local economy, and the health and future of communities in this region. Please hold any questions, by the way, until the end of the press conference. We'll have a Q&A then. Today we're joined by elected officials, business owners, advocates, experts, and community members from across the Finger Lakes who share a common goal, making sure the rapid build-out of massive, hyperscale data centers does not come at the expense of New Yorkers or the places we call home. This is one stop on a statewide tour being organized by State Senator Kristen Gonzalez, bringing communities together around that very mission and calling for action to make sure New Yorkers and New York State gets this right. The Responsible Data Center Development Act gives us a chance to rewrite the playbook and set the rules, bringing more scrutiny and helping to ensure New Yorkers have a clearer picture of what this kind of build-out means for our energy system, climate goals, and most especially our communities. Greenidge Generation fossil-fueled power plant on the west shore of Seneca Lake, about halfway down on this side, has been using the 106 megawatts of power that they produce to mine Bitcoin. Boo. But they recently announced a pivot to an AI data center with an increase in power from the grid of 260 megawatts, effectively tripling their power consumption. There are still questions about whether Greenidge's proposed expansion will ultimately be covered by the Act, but that uncertainty makes this legislation no less urgent. This cannot be about one company or one facility. It's about protecting communities across New York State before they find themselves in the same position we did. And Albany isn't the only place where action is needed. Greenidge is located in the town of Dresden, the village of Dresden, in the town of Torrey. Torrey needs to enact its own moratorium on hyperscale data center development before this expansion goes any further. Greenidge may be ready to move, but that doesn't mean Torrey has to move on Greenidge's timeline. Right? We've learned too much to just sit back and watch history repeat itself. This time, state and local leaders both have the opportunity and the responsibility to act. The moment to draw the line is now. Governor Hochul, the Responsible Data Center Act, Responsible Data Center Development Act, is on your desk. Sign it. Town of Torrey. The time to issue a town-wide moratorium, to issue a town-wide moratorium is now. Please find the table of materials and sign the petition to the town of Torrey. Let's get ahead of this before Greenidge makes its move. We also have a petition to support the governor's signing of the Responsible Data Center Development Act at the same table. We urge you to sign that as well. Before you leave, please stop at the table and sign those two petitions. And now we have an opportunity to hear from some of our amazing speakers. It's an honor and a privilege for me to introduce New York State Senator Kristen Gonzalez, representing the 59th Senate District and prime sponsor behind the Responsible Data Center Development Act. Please join me in thanking Senator Gonzalez for her leadership and welcome her to the stage. Senator.
Good morning. How are we feeling today? Geneva really showed up this morning. It is so incredible to be here. My name is State Senator Kristen Gonzalez. I represent a downstate district in Queens, Brooklyn, and Manhattan. But from Brooklyn to Buffalo and now right here with the Finger Lakes, we are united in the fight against AI data centers. I want to say thank you to everyone who showed up today, but I want to give a special shout out to my colleague and really sister in this fight, Assemblymember Kelles. Can we give her a big round of applause? I have truly never seen someone more knowledgeable and passionate and willing to fight for her community in the years that I have come to know her in the legislature. So thank you to Assemblymember Kelles. And I'm here because 2 years ago, as chair of the Senate Internet and Technology Committee, Assemblymember Kelles and I introduced one of the first bills on data centers, the Sustainable Data Center Development Act. Because in the last few years, we've been seeing, with the rise of new technology like artificial intelligence, also the rise of these really large data centers. And even then, we realized that these tech oligarchs who were making these really big models that sucked up our art, our literature, our articles from journalists, and trained off of all of our data, and were making immense amount of money, we're also trying to build out these data centers that took up a lot of our resources. And in the last few years since we introduced this bill, we introduced more bills. Because across the country, it's been clear what it means if we do nothing. In other states, we have seen local water sources polluted. We have seen communities struggle with the rising cost of energy. We have seen data centers, and we're talking about data centers standard. That we were not going to let these same AI billionaires come here and make money off of our backs. And so we introduced this year an omnibus bill called the Responsible Data Center Development Act. And it included our bill and several others, I will say. Again, Assemblymember Kelles and I were busy in the last few years. We had many bills on this. A big bill that said that we really needed a pause in the biggest data centers, right? And that beyond that, we needed to be clear as a state that if we were going to have centers on a scale we've never seen before, we had to have a framework to meet the moment. And it said that companies should pay their own energy bills, that they shouldn't suck up our water, and if they were going to come onto our turf, it should be on our terms, and that meant long-term investment. Because that's what you need. Many of these centers create short-term jobs with construction, but very, very few long-term jobs. So if they were going to build them and profit, we should see long-term benefit from that as well. And in passing this bill, we passed through the Senate, through the Assembly, we passed it with bipartisan support. And it's been clear since we passed it in June that that is representative of the entire country. 71% of Americans are opposed to the build-out of hyperscale data centers. This is not a partisan issue. It doesn't divide demographics, it unites us across geographies, across ideologies, across, as I mentioned, demographics of different age groups and people across our state and country that are realizing that we really need to fight back. And the good news is that after organizing with so many of you who are here today, and I want to shout out Yvonne for all of the work that she's done putting this together too. Yvonne, thank you so much. And Chadwick and everyone who's here. But after working with all of you, we worked with the governor's office. And we were so grateful for our governor for signing the first in the nation data center moratorium. For 1 year, New York was leading, we are leading, but it's not enough. Because even though we have this year pause, what we don't have is a signed bill that requires those energy costs be shouldered by the companies and not by us. That in these individual fights like right here, a bill that actually acknowledges that this is existential for local communities. Every day in Greenidge, facilities like this are sucking up 198 million gallons of water. And returning it back at 108 degrees. And to be clear, we talk about hyperscale data centers, but what we're really talking about is, of course, things like affordability, but real-life consequences. The impact of having hotter water means more algal blooms. And as many people have realized, these blooms are toxic. They can make us sick. If a dog drinks that water, that dog could die. It isn't overemphasizing the importance of keeping our bodies of water pristine to protect us for public health, but also because local economies are built off of tourism, are built off of the ability to just enjoy our public land and our public water. And so quality of life at the center of all of this should be clear to our governor and to everyone, to the AI billionaires, to the tech companies that want to build this. That should be what is put first. We should be put first over the profit that comes from crypto mining and from AI data centers and from the mass extraction of our public resources. So our message is not a radical one. It is that real people should be put first. And this is our third day of our New York Fights AI Data Centers tour. And in just the 2 days, we've seen people who can't go into their backyards because of the noise pollution they're hearing. We've seen neighbors who are struggling with the rising cost of utility bills, but have to keep their AC on full time because of the heat island effects nearby.
4 degrees.
I've met with our indigenous brothers and sisters of the Tonawanda Seneca Nation and met with their council and seen that
threat of having these large data centers and large-scale developments to our natural wildlife and our history and our culture. So we're fighting for all of us on this tour. And again, to every single person here today demanding that we have this bill signed, I want to say thank you for fighting for New York State. Thank you for fighting for every person who couldn't show up here today. And together, I know we can beat the AI oligarchs. Thank you so much. And I'll pass it back to Joseph. Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you, Senator. Next, please join me in welcoming the amazing, the one and only Yvonne Taylor. Happens to be Vice President of Seneca Lake Guardian, but a founding member and president of the National Coalition Against Crypto Mining. Yvonne.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Senator Gonzalez, for prioritizing the Finger Lakes on your wonderful tour. We really appreciate it. Thank you to Assemblymember Kelles for continuing to fight alongside us. And most importantly, thanks to all of you, business owners, residents, scientists, and indigenous leaders who comprise the backbone of the Finger Lakes and have stood up to fight against Greenidge for the past 9 years. Right behind us is Seneca Lake, a 4.2 trillion gallon body of water that supports families, farms, wineries, and millions of tourists stretching far beyond this shoreline. And just a short distance from here sits Greenidge, a fossil-fueled crypto mine that has made this community intimately familiar with what can happen when an energy-intensive industry moves faster than the rules meant to regulate it. When two rich guys from Connecticut bought the once shuttered coal-fired plant on the shore of Seneca, crypto wasn't a household name like it is today. Together, we sounded the alarm about the harms of crypto mining, put Greenidge on the map, and led the state to adopt a moratorium on using fossil fuel power plants for crypto mining. This is an energy and water-intensive industry, but while the laws were being made, we got left behind, and Greenidge was allowed to keep operating. When thousands of people across New York spoke out against Greenidge's greenhouse gas emissions that are undermining our climate law, we got its Title V air permit denied. But due to faulty laws, we got left behind again as the battle brought legal appeals for years of a fight, and Greenidge got to keep operating. And last year, in the middle of this legal proceeding, Governor Hochul pulled the plug with a backroom deal, leaving us behind while Greenidge got the green light to keep operating again. Now, as Greenidge sees another possible opportunity to not only keep operating, but to triple its energy consumption as it pivots to a hyper-scale artificial intelligence data center, the governor's executive order makes it unclear whether Greenidge would get to keep operating still and then potentially leaving us behind once more. And frankly, even the senator's more comprehensive legislation could allow Greenidge to keep operating, but we are grateful for this bill because we have become the poster child for what happens when a polluting corporation gains a foothold in a community, and we know all too well what it means to be rendered victim to these trespassers.
Come on.
We support this legislation because it helps protect other communities from becoming a sacrifice zone for this industry. But meanwhile, our lake is being exploited for millions of gallons of water every day. Our clean air is being poisoned by toxic emissions like formaldehyde, lead, and mercury, raining over our homes, farms, vineyards, and lake. Our peaceful way of life has been replaced by the constant hum of the Greenidge facility. The livelihoods of our agriculture and tourism industry are compromised by the visual and environmental harms this facility inflicts on the heart of our region. And the town of Torrey, the town hosting this monstrosity, loses home rule for fear that they will be sued by this multi-billion-dollar industrial corporation. Some even like the blood money Greenidge spends to buy favor. Rather than fight for the people they represent, the board members cower as Greenidge announces that they need no permission to do what they will. The Finger Lakes be damned. This is the industry's playbook in action. And some of us, myself included, have been threatened and harassed by Greenidge for exercising our First Amendment rights. So, we are here to say, do not leave us behind this time. Look around you. These are the faces of hard-working families, neighbors, and business owners who have dedicated their lives to turning the Finger Lakes into a world-class tourist destination. These are the faces of the people who have spent generations working together to honor the natural beauty, the air, and the water that sustain us, and the richness of this land that we have been blessed with. While Greenidge rebrands itself as Vulcan Infrastructure Power, we see the writing on the wall. A tripling of energy consumption could mean higher electricity bills for you and I. It could mean more water consumption from our lake, more noise, more light pollution, more toxic emissions, more greenhouse gas emissions. A rebrand doesn't wipe the slate clean. Greenidge's history on Seneca Lake should serve as a warning to communities across New York as developers race to build these massive developments across the state. We know how this story plays out because we've lived it. We are not overreacting. We are not anti-progress. We are pro-sustainable Finger Lakes. We are anti-sacrifice zone. We are anti-billionaire tech bros profiting off the backs of people who live here. They do not deserve more protections than those of us who drink the water, breathe the air, bring in real jobs and revenue, pay the taxes, and live with the consequences. What happens to us will have an impact on everyone. We grow your food. We make your wine. We bring you a haven of clean air and water. We bring a rich heritage of suffragettes and resistors from the Underground Railroad to the birthplace of women's rights. We are fighters, and we're here to say, do not drive another stake in the heart of the Finger Lakes. We are fed up, we will not back down, and we refuse to be left behind. Thank you.
Thanks, Yvonne. Thanks, Yvonne. Next, please welcome Laura Schindel. Laura is the New York State Director at Food and Water Watch, whose advocacy has been instrumental in leading the charge, calling for a moratorium on AI data centers across the state. Laura?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Laura Schindel. I'm the New York State Director with Food and Water Watch. And I just want to say what an honor it is to be standing alongside all of you today. This community has been at the absolute front lines of the resistance to data centers in New York and the dirty fossil fuel infrastructure that they bring along with them. Food and Water Watch first got involved in the fight against the Greenidge crypto mining data center because of the fracked gas power plant that came along with it. We have a history of organizing people power to fight and defeat fracked gas pipelines and power plants across the state. But when the Greenidge facility became on our radar, it seemed unique at the time. In this case, they again wanted to build a fracked gas power plant in a beautiful area, but this time that power wouldn't even go towards the purposes of the electric grid. This time, they wanted all of that pollution for private profit to mine Bitcoin. Greenidge has exemplified the trope of a greedy corporate villain poisoning a community for their own purposes and corporate greed. They saw a community with a beautiful lake, tourism, vineyards, and said, oh, let's just fire up an old coal plant and make it into a fracked gas power plant for our own money, for our own profit. What we've seen through this fight against power plants and data centers is that the oil and gas industry and big tech corporations have a lot in common. They seek to buy influence over our government so that the government will look the other way and corporations can get away with abusing our most precious natural resources. That's why Food and Water Watch was the first national organization to call for a national moratorium on data centers. And we started organizing for a 3-year moratorium on data centers in New York State. And we were thrilled to be in that fight with Senator Gonzalez and Assemblymember Kelles. And I gotta say, when we took on that bill fighting for a 3-year moratorium, everyone said it was far-fetched. Everyone said, even our allies said, you'll never be able to pass that. Why would you work on that? Even if you passed it, the governor would certainly veto it. But this issue is so poignant, so bipartisan. It is such a human issue, and just, it became so clear that public opinion shifted so fast. And ultimately, not only did public opinion shift, but that brought politicians' opinions shifting and their stances alongside it. Just a year ago, Governor Hochul was proclaiming that she wanted New York to be the hub and center of AI data centers and development. Well, but, I mean, look where we are now. Just a year later, thanks to the incredible organizing that's happened here, that's happened across the state, that's happened across the nation, we changed the course of what's considered politically possible and are now the first state in the country with a real moratorium on data centers. But we know that's not enough. The moratorium that the governor issued in July with her own executive order was an incredible first step, but it needs to go much further. We know that the moratorium we have in place may leave communities behind by the way hyperscale data centers are defined. The moratorium we have in place issues an environmental study that we don't think is comprehensive enough to look at the full scope of harms on our water, on disadvantaged communities. And the moratorium is too short, and it lacks required sufficient public participation processes. But I'm not so worried about those insufficiencies, because if organizing on this issue has taught us anything so far, it's that this fight is only just getting started. Every day, another state takes action to restrict data centers. Pennsylvania, Texas. Every day it becomes a more bipartisan issue. Every day we see legislators that wouldn't have been caught dead speaking up against data centers 6 months ago, suddenly lining up to oppose them. The organizing is working, and we have to keep going to get the most comprehensive and long-lasting moratorium that we can. We need everyone to call the governor all the time, sign the petitions all the time, engage in every public comment period, go to every local planning board meeting, every zoning meeting, every rally, because so far this is working, and we have shown that the movement to fight tech oligarchs' invasion of our communities should not be underestimated. The resistance gets stronger every day, and I believe that we will win. Governor Hochul, this message is for you. We need a longer moratorium that doesn't leave communities behind. We need to make sure that fossil fuels and nuclear power plants are not used to power data centers. We need real public participation. We need health and water studies. We need you to sign the Responsible Data Center Development Act now, and then have that be the first step on a long series of steps to protect our communities. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura. Next, we'll hear from Dr. Robert Howarth. Dr. Howarth is the Atkinson Professor, this is a mouthful, Atkinson Professor of Ecology and Environmental Biology at Cornell University, and he's an Earth system scientist. His research on climate, energy, and ecology has been cited over 90,000 times by researchers worldwide. Doctor, microphone is yours.
Thank you, Joseph. Thank you all for coming. I'm really delighted to be here today. I am a professor, I'm a climate scientist. So I want to start with just a brief history lesson. Yvonne mentioned the history of this area, including the women's suffrage movement, which began in Seneca Falls, New York, 10 miles over that way. One of the leaders of that movement is not well known. It's a woman named Eunice Foote. She was number 6 in the signer of the document back in 1848. But what you might not know is she is also the first scientist in the world to describe carbon dioxide as a greenhouse gas and talk about its consequences if we didn't get fossil fuels under control. It started here in this area. We should all be proud, and it was a woman. I've worked broadly on climate change. I've worked a lot of methane and fracked gas and why that's terrible for the climate. My research has shown that fracking in the United States is one of the biggest drivers behind the increase in global warming we've seen over the last decade. We've banned fracking in New York. That's good. What's bad is we still use fracked gas, and data centers are using fracked gas. Now, I published a peer-reviewed paper a few years ago on why liquefied natural gas exports from the U.S. were such a terrible, terrible idea for the climate. And I'm very pleased to tell you that President Biden, in his last year in office, gave a press conference, cited my paper, and put a pause on further exports of LNG from the U.S. because of the climate. Now, that's now been reversed, of course, but in the meanwhile, a year and a half ago, I went to the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. Trying to drown me out. I was asked to go and talk to the 0.001%, the oligarchs of the world, the tech bros. I was asked to go to Davos and explain why LNG was bad for the climate and why climate was such an atrocious problem, existential threat. I'll tell you, there is no interest in the oligarchs in climate change or anything else at the moment. What I heard repeatedly, sometimes directly from the mouths of billionaires, was, we're not worried about climate change because artificial intelligence will tell us how to solve it. Really? So, they are obsessed with it. They're obsessed with it then. They've given up living in the real world, and it's up to us to bring them back to the real world. We know the climate's an existential threat. We know what the problem is. It's caused by our use of fossil fuels. The solution is to move to a fossil fuel-free future as soon as we possibly can. We need to be rid of fossil fuels within 30, 40 years at the maximum. We had a great state law, the CLCPA of 2019 in New York, the Community Leadership and Community Protection Act. The governor has backed away from that leadership. We have to go back to that, and we have to stop using fracked gas. So I join in calling us to push the governor, push our other elected officials, and I'm delighted to be here with the senator and my good friend Anna Kelles. We need to keep pushing to put a moratorium on data centers in New York, across the country, across the world, and we need to make sure that if and when data centers are built, they are not powered by fracked gas or nuclear power. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Howard. Our next speaker, we like to call our next speaker the voice of the Finger Lakes. Michael Warren Thomas has covered the Finger Lakes wine region for 30 years through weekly radio shows and podcasts, and has worked at Billsboro Winery right down the lake on Seneca Lake for the past 3 years, and I'm going to have to move this microphone up.
Thank you, Joseph. Yvonne and Joseph assembled a team 13, 14 years ago, actually even further. I just met them at that time. They were fighting to keep the gas storage hub of the Northeast from going into Watkins Glen, which was a horrible idea at the time. They beat a $1 billion Texas oil company, defeated them. Well, Yvonne was That happened while Yvonne was working full-time at a regular job. And now she's retired, so look out. Look out. Those billion-dollar companies. She's got more time on her hands. It's an honor to be here. The folks from Dan Rappaport, Yvonne and Joseph, all the other, Dr. Kelles, and thank you for coming to focus on the Finger Lakes today, State Senator. This region is an amazing wine region. I've covered it for a couple of decades. And this lake behind me has half the wineries in the entire Finger Lakes region surround this one lake. It's a unique microclimate. It's warmer. It's what allows us to do what we do here and ship wine around the world. A lot of people who live here don't realize that Finger Lakes wines are available in Paris, Berlin, Chicago, all across the country, all across the world. They're exported more than people realize. And this is a tremendous resource that's at threat from companies like Greenidge. There was proposed the largest trash incinerator in the United States for Romulus. Believe it or not. It was going to be like 2,000 feet downwind or upwind from a K through 12 school. It was a serious proposal, and that got defeated pretty quickly because of this organization of people in this area. One of the things that was brought up was the amount of water that Greenidge uses. 130 million gallons a day going through intakes that you can walk through. Most people can't see them. They're down by the plant, but there are two of them. They're as big, you can walk through these things. You shouldn't, but you could. The water that they bring in and heat up every day, 100 million gallons, 130 million gallons, would fill 27,000 tanker trucks. 27,000 tanker trucks, which would stretch end to end from Syracuse to Albany on the thruway. It's the scale at which these industrial operations operate that we just can't comprehend. And all that warm water is coming back into the lake in a warming climate, which we already have HABs, the harmful algal blooms here. We need to protect this resource, and that's what this act can do for the communities that aren't as well organized as this. And there aren't many communities as well organized as what Seneca Lake Guardian has brought to our region. So thank you, Yvonne and Joseph, for doing this, helping to lead the way. You know, that hum that they referred to at Greenidge becomes a rumble, then it becomes a racket, and it's just the sound of money going to Connecticut. And what we're left with is the pollution, the air pollution, the water pollution, the soil pollution, the noise pollution that's going on 24/7 for decades. And we're left with that while they leave with the money. So let's get together, let's sign the petitions, let's ask Governor Hochul repeatedly. She needs to get the message, as said, daily, to sign this act, the Responsible Data Center Development Act. Get this done. Let's move forward. Thank you for having us here.
Thanks, Michael. See what I mean? Some people just call him the voice. Few people understand Greenwich's impacts on the surrounding community better than our next speaker, Ellen Campbell. Ellen and her family have lived less than a mile from that facility for over 20 years. So, Ellen, I'm going to put the microphone back up for you.
Thanks for raising the mic. Thank you, Joseph. My name is Ellen Campbell. I live with my husband, Ken, in the town of Torrey. On Seneca Lake, less than a mile from the Greenidge facility. We also own a vacation rental right next door, which we have had for over 20 years. Each year we have returning guests who also love the lake, some spending 1 or 2 weeks here for the last 11 years. They visit the wineries and the restaurants and enjoy local musical acts at venues like the wineries, the Point of the Bluff, CMAC. They swim, they kayak, they enjoy the area as much as we do. That's because we have clean air, water, recreation, and the economy this supports is the backbone of our way of life. And it's why we draw millions of visitors to our region every year. Like many others, Ken and I worked for decades to be able to afford a lakeside home. Our entire family gathers here for a week each year to enjoy the area and build lifelong memories. I thought this was going to be my forever home, one that I would pass on to my kids and to my grandchildren, but now I'm not so sure of the future. If Greenidge Generation pivots to building an AI data center in this small, picturesque lakeside area, my dreams, along with others, may be gone. If you've been paying attention to the media, you have a good idea of why I'm afraid of this project. You understand why those who love the Finger Lakes are trying to pass a stronger bill to mandate a moratorium on all data center projects, including Greenidge. Until we have the opportunity to understand this kind of development and how it will impact our health, our drinking water, our electric bills, our tourism business, our peace and quiet, and our property values. Having lived in the shadow of Greenidge since it reopened in 2017, I understand what is at stake for me, my neighbors, and my friends in the businesses that depend on tourism. Our lovely lake and our way of life has already suffered enough. Greenidge has not yet met the air pollution limits required by the DEC and should not be allowed to expand to a hyperscale artificial intelligence data center. At the core of this project, Greenidge will be changing from a promised energy provider to a huge energy consumer of 260 megawatts. Neither the executive order from Gayogo nor the Responsible Data Center Development Act makes it clear that they would stop the Greenidge expansion. But Senator Gonzalez's bill is far more comprehensive and will offer protection for other data center development. In the meantime, we are asking Yates County, our state elected officials, and more importantly, the town of Torrey, to reject this project by adopting a local moratorium, if not a total ban on data center development. This is our town. These are our lakes, and we should have a say in any project that has this great an impact on our lives. Thank you for attending the rally today, and to Senator Gonzalez for coming to understand these very serious issues. Please attend your county and town meetings, sign the online petition, let our local officials know that we don't want this here, and let Governor Hochul know that we want broader protections beyond her executive order. Sign the Responsible Data Development Center Act into law today. Thank you.
Thanks, Ellen. Next, please join me in welcoming Mark Pittifer, here today on behalf of Waterloo Container, a family-owned business that has long supported the wine industry in the Finger Lakes and beyond. Mark?
Good afternoon, everyone. Before we begin, it's very easy in this world to get distracted. We have the phones, the AI, everything. But if you just could take 5 seconds to just look at what is behind us. That's what's at risk. So, my name is Mark Pittifer. I'm speaking on behalf of Bill Lutz and the Waterloo Container Company in Seneca Falls. We're the largest family-owned stocking distributor for the wine and craft beverage industries in the northeastern United States and Canada. And we've remained in the Finger Lakes for nearly 50 years, serving those great industries. The Finger Lakes has spent generations building an economy around the wine and craft beverage industry, agriculture, tourism, and small business. But this is more than just jobs and dollars. It's about protecting our water, our environment, our health, and our quality of life. Seneca Lake, the crown jewel of the Finger Lakes particularly, is a resource we simply cannot replace. It is invaluable. Before the state allows massive energy-intensive data centers to move forward, we need answers, and we have none. What will it mean for power costs? What will it do to our water, our environment, the noise, disruptions to the ecosystem, and the health and well-being of the people who live here? And what are we getting in return? We've already seen massive water withdrawals. We've seen thermal pollution and heated water discharge destroying the fish. We've seen harmful algal blooms, over 1,100 cubic yards of dredging, and this new project would have a far greater impact. There are so many long-term unknowns associated with this project, and the state needs to protect our lakes, not put them in jeopardy. We are simply asking the state, put the people, the businesses, the natural resources that are already here first. Take a serious, hard look at the long-term consequences of this project. What we protect today will determine what kind of Finger Lakes we leave for the next generation. Please invest in the industries that make up this region. Don't threaten them. Clean, fresh water means healthy families, thriving farms, strong local businesses, and communities that don't have to depend on government to fix tomorrow what they failed to protect today.
Thanks, Mark. And now, please welcome Sachem Sam George of the Cayuga Nation. Sachem George serves on the Haudenosaunee Environmental Task Force, addressing environmental degradation in communities through culturally appropriate environmental education, restoration, and protection strategies. Sachem Sam.
Thank you and peace and greetings to everyone. It's an honor to be here among all of you, and especially the assemblyman and the senator over there. And it seems to me that we're headed in the right direction in keeping these, or at least letting them know we don't want them here. They don't belong here. Especially if, I know when I heard they were from Connecticut, what the heck are they doing in New York State? They have no business here. So we need to keep on helping Mother Nature and the water and the trees and the air around the lakes. Otherwise, we will not be here much longer. So we need to keep them out of here. I appreciate what Anna said earlier today about having one mind. And we need to do that when this comes together against all of this destruction of Mother Earth. We don't need it. And thank you.
Short, sweet, and to the point. Finally, please join me in welcoming back to the microphone New York State Assemblymember Dr. Anna Kelles, representing the 125th Assembly District, and whose environmental leadership has helped protect our community in New York statewide. She's really been an environmental champion for the Finger Lakes. Dr. Kelles.
Decade, and we'll be here for as long as it takes. So I'm going to try and bring this to a full circle. We are here because not only have we been fighting this facility for almost a decade, trying to keep them honest, trying to create some kind of transparency on what the actual impact will be, which we find with this industry in particular. They are more slippery than almost any other industry that I have tried to work with, preventing us from having the truth about the information on the impacts that they will have on our communities. Until they're in, the infrastructure is in place and it's too late. And it has happened over and over and over again. And right now, in New York State, we have over 12 gigawatts of data center proposals that are in the NISO interconnection queue waiting for approval. And for anybody who wants to just to have a sense of what 12 gigawatts actually means, for every single residential facility in the entire state, that is about 7 gigawatts. Every resident. So that's how much we have of data centers waiting to get into New York. Think about the energy demand that we have just for all the residents of the 20 million people that live in New York. The amount of pressure and demand that it will put on one of the most aging infrastructures, energy infrastructures in the entire country. How much buildup they will have to do on that infrastructure for these 12 gigawatts of facilities. And over and over and over again, what we have seen here, which is being repeated around the state, they are particularly interested in going to places where they can minimize as much as possible their operating costs. And one of the most expensive costs for them is the cooling systems because of the massive amounts of computational power that they are putting into a facility, which is exactly why they came to the Finger Lakes, because they have water that they can pull in for free. They're not paying for those 130 million gallons of water that they're pulling in every single day. But we are. And we are saying no more. The Finger Lakes and the Great Lakes make up over 95% of the surface fresh water in the United States. So when we say that this is an irreplaceable resource, we are not exaggerating. And when we talk about seeing, as residents of this area, consistently seeing increases in harmful algal bloom outbreaks every single year, year over year, we know why. Because we live here. We are seeing it every single day. We know that the temperature increases are one of the greatest known contributors of harmful algal blooms. And Seneca and Cayuga Lake are seeing escalating outbreaks. We know why. When you dump 108 degree temperature water into a Class C trout stream, killing those trout, by the way, because they start to die off at around 70 degrees, that then enters into the lake, does it surprise us that the area of the greatest harmful algal blooms in Seneca Lake is the northern part of the lake? Does not surprise us. It goes hand in hand. So I'm going to end by going through why we need the governor to sign this bill. She did her executive order. We have said over and over again that it is not enough. But I want to explain to you all here today why it is not enough and why we stand here together to say our vote in November depends on signing this bill. Our bill puts a moratorium on facilities with 20 or more megawatts, not 50, not higher, 20. So it starts at a much lower level of megawatt size where we have our moratorium. It requires that the environmental study is done and that a report is released. And the environmental study that it requires is significantly more comprehensive, and it is required that it is done by the Department of Environmental Conservation, not DPS. DPS's expertise is not environment. Their expertise is energy. Why is that what the executive order highlights, that DPS will be the lead on this environmental study? It's very convenient. Ours requires that be done by the DEC. It requires that after 18 months, the state release proposed regulations that are absolutely needed to minimize the environmental impacts of this industry. That is required by this law. It requires that data centers be put in their own rate class, not that we evaluate the cost of data centers to all of New Yorkers and we create a fund that they put money into, potentially, that minimizes to the best of their ability the impact when it does not require transparency. So how do we know the full impact if they are not put in their own rate class? That would be required by this bill. This bill requires, and it sets a timeline for off-ramping from the use of fossil fuels. It requires that they increase the amount of sustainable energy and, if feasible, that that energy is behind the meter. That is not required by the executive order. It requires transparency. It requires public comment periods and public hearings for each of these data center proposals. That is not required by the executive order. It also requires that there is an agreement with every single data center that is approved, that they commit to investing in their host communities to address the environmental impacts and harm, the water harm, the air pollution, the environmental harms across the board. The bill also requires that it evaluate the impact on farmland. The executive order does not. For all of these reasons, Governor, we are here as voters, all of us. We want you to sign this bill before November. We will remember and we will keep fighting. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Please take a camera look at everyone who came.
That concludes our press conference. We will entertain questions from the press at this point.
So one of the things that I talked about that is really important is the transparency. The question is, how will our bill affect this Greenidge operation if in fact it does? And one of the reasons it's unclear unclear whether or not it will is because they are being very slippery with what exactly this proposal is. And that would be something that would be addressed by this legislation. The moratorium is specifically on the DEC releasing any new permits. But it's unclear whether they would need to expand their permit to increase the water intake for their coolant systems. It's unclear whether they would need permits for expanded amounts of solid waste that they would be sending to landfills. It's unclear whether they would need to put more diesel generators for backup, which would also require expansion of their DEC permits. If they require any DEC modifications or additional permits, there would be a moratorium on those. The executive order does not put a time limit. People keep talking as if there is a time limit. I will to note, I think it's important everybody does, it doesn't have one. And I think that when she does sign the bill, she should remove the time limit as well. At a bare minimum, it should be 18 months, because 18 months is what is required to release the regulations. And the moratorium should be in place until the regulations are released. And so hopefully that will be what we see at the end of the day, and then in that case it will. But we need that transparency.
Thank you. That was great. That was great. No, I mean that 100% to everything Assemblymember Kelles said. And I will add, while this is for new permits issued by the DEC, what would apply to all existing AI data centers, or this facility if it transitions to an AI data center moving forward, is a separate energy and water class. Today, these large energy facilities are billed in the same class as all of us. And without this legislation, it means that those utility companies can come to the PSC or Public Service Commission and say, we have so much more strain, we have to raise everyone's energy bills. And that's exactly what's happened in places like Henrico County in Virginia, which saw for the local school district their energy bills go up 25% near existing data centers, while at the same time asking those schools to lower their lights or dim their lights during the school day because they're at the brink of rolling blackouts. The truth is, we can't afford higher bills here, can we? And New York is already in an energy crisis. So if we look at this facility, which is significant in energy intensity, but also look at every other center together, we're looking at potentially putting on over 12,000 megawatts on the grid. For context, New York uses 31,000 a year. Can you imagine putting on almost half the state onto the grid? We can't afford that. We don't have the energy, and we certainly, without this bill, should not be paying for it. So that's why that does apply to existing hyperscale data centers.
I've got a question from David over here for the elected officials behind me.
Okay, so the rate class thing, that's perfect, okay? If we raise costs for them, maybe it'll discourage some of this expansion. The other question is it possible to get them, or force them, put in a closed-loop cooling system? Yes! Instead of, I pay a water bill. They're getting it free, millions of gallons. Can we require a closed-loop cooling so they're not heating up our water and causing hazards?
So that's one of the things that, and the senator, please add to this as well. But one of the things that this bill does require is that that study. That is super important because it's much more comprehensive, and it would include water impacts, it includes air impacts, it includes sound, noise pollution, it includes impact on farmland, much more comprehensive, and it requires that the DEC then put regulations in place to minimize the impact on water and air pollution. So it could put into regulations that every new data center would be required to have fully closed loop systems. Now, I want to be very clear what I mean when I say fully closed loop, because there was a scientific paper that came out that shows that a lot of data centers are lying by omission, saying that it is a closed loop system, but only talking about the inner loop and not the outer loop that cools the heated water from that inner loop that is in fact closed, that is the one that's pulling the heat off of the rooms and the data center facilities. So it's the outer loop that we are talking about, a fully closed loop system, and that is absolutely something that they could demand upon getting the results of that more comprehensive data environmental impact assessment. That's why we put the bill. That's the question. Yep. So the media, any other questions from the media?
Just a clarification.
Yes, please.
What is hyperscale? I've heard it said a couple times. What does that actually refer to?
That's a very great question. That is not actually officially like unified defined, but the question was, what is a hyperscale? Is it defined? And there is no universal definition of hyperscale. We were actually talking about this ourselves. The reason that the original data center moratorium bill that I carried with Senator Krueger had 20%, and why the omnibus bill also that the senator carries has 20% is because that is what is defined at the federal level as the point at which they are considered large-scale data centers. The reason that I put 20% also, or 20 megawatts, I'm sorry, is because you want to get to a scale where the impact on our systems will start to identified as significant. So the state has actually identified about 10 megawatts as the point at which the approval process shifts to being state as well as local, because it is considered to have an effect on both the transmission line infrastructure and the distribution line infrastructure. So it's very technical. If it is plugged in straight to a transmission line infrastructure, its impact at a much smaller size is actually relatively great. If it's plugged into a distribution line infrastructure, it can be larger and still not have as dramatic effect. Why? It's like the difference between plugging into a main artery, you're gonna have a great impact, versus like a capillary at the end of your foot, it's maybe not gonna have as big an impact. So what we said is, what is the cutoff in which the state says, if you are plugged into a transmission line, this is the size at which you're going to start to have a noteworthy, significant impact on the reliability of the grid. I know that is super nerdy, dorky. That is the answer to your question. Hopefully the first one helps.
No notes.
She's like, I don't want to touch that one.
Okay, that's really about all the time we've got. I want to thank our amazing slate of speakers once again. This is just one stop on a very ambitious statewide tour that Senator Gonzalez is undertaking. She's going to travel all over the state, speaking with and to impacted communities. So one more big round of applause for Senator Gonzalez. Thank you all for being here. Anybody that wants to, please go over and sign the petitions. Sign the two petitions that we have over at the table, and grab a slice of pizza, and thank you all for coming.